Okay, so of course we are going to start with a single view application. Let's call it stacks on the desktop. Go to our storyboard. And the first thing I'm going to do is start with a stack view. Right? Doesn't actually matter which one. I'm going to give my stack view some basic constraints, telling it to fill up the whole screen. And then, so I'm going to give it top, left, and right constraints. And I actually want this stack view to be a square, always to be a square. So how can I make the height the same as the width? A ratio. How do I make this some sort of ratio?
Would you like set the constraint of one to be equal to the other?
Okay, how would I do that? Okay.
And horizontal, vertical.
Where? Yeah. But that's not a constraint. I need to add constraints to this element.
TIE fighter.
Okay, TIE fighter.
Width and height.
Well, I can't set them equal to be constants. I don't want it to be constant.
Aspect ratio.
Aspect ratio. So when we add that, we see that it gave us a 343 to 309 aspect ratio. Because that was the current width and height.
Why don't you give the constraint at the bottom of you give on top, left and right, not the bottom?
Because I don't care about how far it is from the bottom. Right? I don't want to give it a constant bottom spacing. All I know is I want it to be 0 from the top, 16 from the left, and 16 from the height. The bottom can move as much as it wants.
And what if we had another one underneath that?
Well, then I'd have to make decisions about how I wanted to format it. Right? So there's no right way to do auto layout. It's how do you want your views to be laid out. Right? So in this case, all I care about is that this fills up the available space and is a square. Right? So what should I set? I need to change this aspect ratio, right? From 343 to 309. So I'm going to edit it and make it what? 1 to 1. 1:1. Exactly. I've already designated constraints that are going to decide how wide it is because I gave it left and right. So the left and right is dynamic, but it's always going to be, it's got the information. Right? We've told it how to know its width. But we didn't tell it how to know its height. So it's going to go, okay, I'm going to try to satisfy both the left and right constraint and also the fact that you want this 1 to 1, and I'm going to increase the height. All right, so now we've got a square. Where's what?
Is that just the top constraint? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Aspect ratio. Right? So I first clicked on the stack view. I went to the TIE fighter. You guys can move in too. What? You're like super far away. It's a little TV. I don't know what you're doing. Okay, so we go to the TIE fighter, right? We click on aspect ratio. Do you see that? Can you move it to the front? Watching you squint is painful.
Sorry, guys. Bumper cars.
Okay, so we click on aspect ratio. I'm not going to do it again because I already have it. And then we edited the aspect ratio because this is what it was by default. It just said whatever aspect ratio it currently is, I'm going to assume that's the aspect ratio you want it, which was 343 to 309, the current width and height. That's not true though. I don't want it to be that. So I just clicked edit and then changed it to 1 to 1. All right, aspect ratio for those of you who don't know what that means, is it means the ratio between the width and the height.
What was the thing called that you clicked down?
This,
Yeah.
I call that the TIE fighter.
The TIE fighter.
Okay, this is the regular TIE fighter. This is Darth Vader's TIE fighter.
Yeah.
And this is the bar graph.
So then 1 to 1 makes it match on both sides, like.
Makes the width equal to the height.
Okay.
Yeah. So now I can break this. You know, if I also tried to set the height equal to be 300, it now goes all red and scary because it's like I can't make it 1-to-1 and have the height be 300. Right? Doesn't work. But now we got a square. Woohoo! Okay. So just to kind of quickly talk about what a stack view does, I'm going to grab a view, just a regular view, drop it in, open up my sidebar. So I see I have one view in my stack view. I'm going to change the background color of my view. Maybe something a little more visual, like this orange. Okay. And now I'm going to copy it and paste it a couple times. So now I've got 3 views in here in my stack view. All right, I'm going to go to my stack view, and on the right side I have some options. I have alignment, distribution, and spacing. All right. First off, let's increase the spacing a little bit. So this gives me spacing between my views. Currently, this view is that wide, right? So that's one on the left. The middle one has no width whatsoever, and the one on the right is kind of big. That's not very helpful. So I'm going to go to my stack view, and I'm going to change distribution to fill equally.
Oh.
Now it automatically makes those subviews fill the space equally. That's really nice. Can you think of a way of doing this with basic auto layout constraints? Yeah, it would suck. You'd be like, all right, this view is 33% or maybe 32% because we have to allow for spacing of that view, and then we got to like put this one centered, this one, right? You could do all this like craziness, or you just drop a stack view in there, throw the 3 views in there, set it to fill equally, and you're done. All right? So now I've got 3 columns, right? But I want 3 to make it look like those profile pictures. I need 3 columns and 3 rows. So what do you think I can do? I have a horizontal stack view.
Add another stack view.
Add another stack view. What kind of stack view? I'll add a vertical stack view. So instead of these 3 boring views, I will add a stack view, 3 stack views,
Oh, just drag it.
each with 3 views in them.
And now you have Instagram.
And now you have Instagram. Although that's actually a collection view. All right, so does that make sense, right? We had a stack view that gave us 3 columns. Inside of each of those columns, we made 3 rows. And then in each of those rows, we put, so technically we have 3 columns. We made each one of those into a row of its own and then put 3 elements inside of it. All right, so now this view is the top left, then we have the middle left, bottom left, top middle, middle middle, bottom middle, top right, middle right, bottom right.
And if you wanted to, like, for grouping purposes, if you wanted to go left to right, you would just switch the stack views, right?
Yeah, so you'd have to change these 3 stack views from vertical to horizontal, and then the outer stack view from horizontal to vertical. And now we've got top left, middle.
That was cool that you were able to do that. That you were able to switch it.
Yeah, so you can select multiple views of the same type and then change things of the same type. So you can change the axis right here. Right? If you're like, oh, I have the wrong type, I want to switch it. All right?
Is there any way you can change the spacing of every view?
There we go.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, so you just select them all and then edit the spacing property.
How do you get more margin on the outside?
What do you guys think?
The
Constraints.
stack makes it.
How do I get more space on the outside?
Change the space.
change the left and right constraints, right? Because the outer stack view is actually setting how big the whole thing is. Are you okay? Okay.
I don't know where.
So here, maybe instead of 16, we want it to be 50. And here, we want this to be 50. And now it got small. Okay. So now, this is close to what we want, right? It's pretty good, but we want all of these four to be the same. Right? One big picture. Right? So, how do you think we can frame that? So we have our outer stack view. What are we going to have inside? So we have rows and columns, right?
We only have 3 stack views inside there, so like one for the big picture, one for the 2 on the side, and then one for the one on the bottom.
So yeah, we could do 3 equally spaced on the bottom, right? And then somehow we have to do a little one equally spaced over here, right? And then have one big thing right here.
So would you do would the outer one be 2 horizontal stack views? And then, but then how do you distribute?
Yeah, it's a little tricky, right?
Yeah.
So, we have more than just fill equally, right, with our stack views. We also have fill proportionally, fill, equal spacing, equal centering. Okay, this is just fill equally. So let's keep the 3 on the bottom, right? That stack view is fine. We need those 3 on the bottom. But now, instead of having this like this, we're going to delete one of these. Actually, I'm just going to cut it. I'm going to paste it into here, or just drag it into here. Delete one of the views. Make it a vertical stack. And delete one of the views.
Almost.
We're closer, right? We've got 3 on the bottom, 2 on the right. Here, let's delete one more of these. Okay. So we've got our bottom row that's equal spacing 3. Then we've got our top row, which is currently equal spacing, but probably shouldn't be, right? Because we want it 2/3 and 1/3. So what we're going to do is take this view, and how can we make this view take up 66% of the space that this view takes up, at the top? Not aspect ratio.
Would it, I feel like
Aspect ratio is with yourself.
I feel like it's like a 2-to-1 ratio between the width of.
So it's a width. It's a width thing.
Yeah.
So do you guys remember how I made a view 50% of that button? How did I make it 50% the width of the view before? I'm going to control click from the view to the stack view and go equal width. But then I'm going to go to that constraint. Here's the width constraint, and do this multiplier. And I'm going to make it 0.66. All right? Now, we've got some errors here because our stack view is still fill equally, and it can't both fill equally and have that view be 66%. So we're going to change it to, oh no, it was this one, sorry. This is still fill equally. So we're going to change it to fill. So the way fill works is it's going to let this be however wide we set it, and then it's just going to fill up the rest of the space with whatever the other view is. So now this one takes up 66%, and this just takes up the rest of the space. Okay, does that make sense? So again, you start with equal width. You go here, and you go equal width, and then you have to edit that constraint and actually make it, well, it's not equal, it's 66 times the width.
So what's the fill proportion?
I think you can also make it 2 to 3. Yeah,
Oh, so exactly.
so it's actually more accurate. Right?
Although that's all.
Notice, it's not perfect.
My OCD.
Yeah, so we'll fix that in a minute. Right? So now we need to make this row, right, this whole row, 66% also. So how would we do that?
Control click that stack view to the top stack view. Equal width
Equal width,
or equal height. Sorry.
equal height. Now we want to make the height of that entire row, which is a stack view, 66% of the height of the parent. So we go equal heights, and then we find that constraint, and we change it to a 2 to 3. Of course, nothing happens yet. Why doesn't anything happen?
Because you still have
Yeah, you still
the fill.
The outer stack view is still fill equally, so we have to change it to fill.
There we go.
So
We're getting pretty sousy now, right? So there's some things we can do here. We can take this and we can try making it 1 to 1, which it already is. So that didn't quite work, right? And this should be 1 to 1, because this is the actual view that says I am 66% width and height of a square. So it should also be a square, right? But this is still off, and we hate that. So what can we do? Any ideas?
base. No.
I want to mess with fill proportionally, but I don't know how it works.
Can you like increment the size of the squares at the bottom a little bit so that line moves to the right?
So I think this might work. I'm going to take this view right here and constrain it to this view right here. And then I'm going to put, what do you think? What can I use?
Equal width.
I don't want them to be equal width. This one's tiny. One's big.
Leading, trailing.
Oh, I
one of
see,
those,
I see.
Trailing. What's trailing mean?
That they end at the same location.
That they end at the same location. Now this one gets angry, right? Because it can't actually satisfy that.
One to one.
Okay, because spacing is not perfect. And you have to think about there's spacing, 2 lines of spacing in here, but there's only 1 line of spacing in here. So it throws off the math a little bit. Okay.
Could you work it
But
into
the
the
big-
formula?
Probably. I don't know what it would be though.
But the big box doesn't mind that it's no longer 66%.
It is. It is. Well, we made it an exact 2 to 3 ratio. So when we do proportional widths, it's exactly, you can put a ratio in here. So it's exactly 2 to 3. Right? 0.66 actually worked better. Right, here, let's go back. Proportional width.
If there is a way to
Right?
reference
That actually works better.
It works perfectly.
Yeah. Now let's see if it always works.
I feel like it would work better here.
Too big.
Just because of sheer size. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
No.
Right? So it's a specific relationship between how big it is and the spacing. Right? Now, of course, we might want to increase spacing if it was this big, but we'd have to do that programmatically. Right? So it has to get like back to here before it lines up again. All right, so we've got some issues to iron out. So I think the best way to do it is to just make sure that these do indeed line up, right? Now, the way I'm going to do that again is I'm going to sacrifice a little bit of width.
What if you got what if you got rid of spacing?
Then there's no spacing.
Like, if you had different colors, then wouldn't it line up?
Yeah, but we're talking about images here.
Well, I mean,
And plus we
So
want
that
spacing.
relationship,
Try to make it look good.
so that relationship between the spacing and how big the actual white line is always going to be constant. So there's no way of you making it smaller or bigger and keep the same spacing.
I don't know. I don't think there's any built-in way to make spacing a ratio of a width or something. Right? Because spacing itself is an attribute of the stack view. It's not a constraint. But you could do it programmatically. But let's go back to that idea where we map this view to this view. All right, and we go trailing space. Now it gets angry, and the reason is because it can't satisfy trailing space and have the width be 66%, no matter how hard it tries. Do you have any ideas?
what if we didn't care so much about the 1-to-1 ratio?
What do you mean we didn't care so much?
So we got rid of the 1-to-1 constraint on the big rectangle.
No, we want it to be we want the full one to be 1-to-1 always.
Well, I was gonna say it adjusted to where it tried. Like,
You mean this one?
Yeah. Like where
This
that-
one doesn't have a 1-to-1 on it right now.
Oh, well then.
It's got a 66% or a 2 to 3 height and a 2 to 3 width.
Okay, so to leave the 2 to 3 height, and then for the width, have it be the width to the trailing.
Yep. We can just get rid of the width one.
So it's still like as close to 1 as it.
It's really close, right? It's still almost perfect in terms of 66. But now it'll always line up on here. Because we're just saying, instead of setting the width of this box via a width constraint, we're setting it via a trailing constraint. But it doesn't care. It still has width information. Right? And so now, of course, we would just need to go in and replace all of these views with image views. And so we go in here, grab an image, and delete all those. Oh, wait.
Is there a way to like swap them?
No. Okay, yeah, that's really annoying. So I actually, when I built this, I did it with image views to start with. I was just doing it with views to show color. But if you'd done the exact same thing with image views, it would have worked. The other thing that you could actually do, if you were in this situation you didn't want to rebuild it, is just put an image view inside of every view and make the image view top, bottom, left, and right all 0. And then it'll just fill up the whole space. Right? Because views are just containers.
It's like this.
Yeah. So you're just saying, put this other object inside of this view and just have it take up all the space. So then we don't lose any of our constraints.
That's super helpful for like setting up your layout and such, but I'm assuming it wouldn't affect like memory wise. It wouldn't be too
Almost no
right,
different.
like nothing.
No.
Okay, cool. That's a really cool way to see it.
Especially now with like, because now they have the graphics cards and the iPhones,
Yeah.
the 3D games. It's probably nothing.
Actually, so these, we can just delete these. Paste this in here. Do that. Right? Because there's no actual constraints on any of our views except for this. Oh, I gotta fix that. Trailing. Cool. I got a UI fix. Okay, so that was a very complex structure that's completely dynamic, right? Here's on an iPhone 5, still works perfectly. Here's on an iPad, still works perfectly, other than the spacing that we might want to change, you know, whatever. But the structure and everything and the proportions are all perfect. And there's very few constraints, right? Really, we just put a bunch of stack views. Right, so let's close all of our image views again. A bunch of stack views with, you know, fill. A little bit of kind of magic with equal width, equal height kind of deal with a multiplier to get it to be 66. That's equal, right? That's a boring one. Both of these two are just simple fill equally. But then we just had to cheat with these two, right, to get them to be the right height. Well, not cheat, but, you know, be sneaky. But we got a very complex thing, and it's all dynamic, and it all works perfectly, and it's beautiful. So stack views are great, is the moral of the story, right? We could put, let's do really quick, you know, a stack view along the bottom of the screen. It takes up the whole screen. Do left, right, bottom, and height. Throw a button in there. Go back to a phone. All right, we'll throw a button in there that has text color of white, background color of, I don't know, red. Right, make this fill equally. Add some spacing. Right, make this green. That's a little sickening, whatever. Be like, cancel. And next. Right, here's the start for your Tinder app. Right? And again, it's like these are all auto layout. It's perfect. It's beautiful. It's done. And how many constraints did I add? 4. Right? I put in the stack view and I said I want you this far from the bottom, this far from the left, this far from the right, and here's a height. And I got 2 buttons that look great on every device.
You can always play with it more.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I would never leave an app looking like this. Okay, so this is just the beginning of auto layout, but stack views are very important, especially when diving into tic-tac-toe. You should now be able to build the tic-tac-toe board in all of like 3 minutes. It was the first 2 steps of what I just did, right? So now you know. Cool? Questions, QA, open, discussion. Tell me how your day was.
How do we get to the square view?
To make this square, you have to go size. Where's it? Form sheet, page sheet. No, you got to go freeform. Then you go over to ruler. You go freeform. Wait, maybe you don't need to change this. Inferred. Freeform, and then go like 500 by 500. There you go. There's your square. Or maybe 800 by 800. I don't know.
Yeah, the platform is only to use a square view to make it adapted to all devices.
Yeah. I mean, you can. I left that in there because that's how all of the GIFs and videos are. It used to default to a square view. I think Apple realized that it's kind of dumb. But I left it in there and I mentioned that developers do use it because some do. You'll see examples online with square views. But there's no, you don't have to. What it does though is it forces you to think more about your auto layout. Because notice, this looks like crap now. Because it's overflowing. We're never actually going to be displaying it on a screen that looks like this, but you need to be thinking about auto layout more. So just to show you how I would fix this, I would take this stack view and say we need to have vertical spacing. And have it be like 50 maybe. Now I get red, so I'm going to say this constraint has a lower priority. This constraint has a lower priority. And I want this whole stack view centered.
So pretty much the advantage of using that view is that, let's say tomorrow Apple does release a device with that type of screen, it's going to be ready for that.
Yep.
Because like how I've usually been doing, I've been testing with those. But right, what about
If you
another-
make
another screen
right,
says,
if you design your UI really, really well, it won't matter what device you run it on. It will always work.
Now, how does it work like when? So there are apps like, let's say so back then, like when the iPhone 5 came out, like the apps, obviously auto layout wasn't a thing back then, but it would default to the screen of the iPhone 4, and the other space would be left empty. Sometimes you see that like with iPad.
Yeah, I remember when the phone screen would just show up in the middle of the iPad.
Yeah, and you set off everything else. So would it do that? Like, let's say if you set it up that it fits in all of these devices, and then an iPad Pro comes out tomorrow and it's bigger, would your app default to the biggest size, or would it just go crazy?
No, I mean it'll fill up the available space.
Okay.
And if your auto layout is not good enough, then it might look weird.
Okay.
Okay, but guys, try to understand the basics of auto layout, but don't lose too much time to it, okay? It's one of these things that it took me months and months of building apps and rebuilding apps and tinkering to get like a relatively basic understanding of auto layout and know what I know now. It takes so long, all right? It'll be do not sink a bunch of time into it. You need to be focusing on Swift, view controllers. Soon we'll be diving into segues and protocols and delegates and all of this other code stuff. That's where I want you spending your time, not on auto layout. Okay? So I want you spending like a maximum of like 20 minutes on auto layout per assignment. If you don't get it after 20 minutes, I don't care. Move on. That's not where I want you to be sinking your hours. Okay? It'll come with time. But right now we need to make sure that you understand the code part. That it's going to be harder to learn afterwards. Okay? Any other questions?
The next hackathon, what would the topic?
I'll tell you on the next hackathon day. Don't think about it. Focus on this now.
They all have to be related
See you.
to like topics, so can they all be different? Like you make a complete different.
No, make a complete different app if you want. I actually think it's more fun that way. And you'll learn more. Cool? No other questions?
I kept getting like when I tried to space them based on the other objects, I kept like the size of it just stayed the same no matter what constraint I put in there.
Size of what?
The size of the spacing between them seemed to stay the same no matter what number I put in.
You might have added an additional spacing constraint instead of just changing the one you had.
I kept deleting any ones that I had in there.
I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the
Okay.
situation.
Okay.
Any other general questions? Okay. So the goal for this weekend is finish up the iOS basics section and then go back and do all of the optionals, all right? Spend some time really just diving into the Swift language, getting comfortable with OOP, like just do all the optionals. If you finish all the optionals and do everything, read the text for the iOS Intermediate, but don't do any assignments, all right? I don't want you guys getting too far ahead.
Okay.
Alrighty,
Got it.
bye.
Please upload that.
Yeah,
That's very useful.